then lastly, if you hear the word medic being yelled out on the battlefield, that's our modern code word that there is something wrong, somebody's got heat stroke or somebody hurt themselves or whatever. And so if you would pass that along to me if I don't react to that on the American side of the American Revolution. And then we've got I saw some redcoats there, yeah, a British force coming out from behind the trees. And they are evidently, I don't know, we saw where they came from, where these British came from. Obviously, the congressional forces did not know that they were there. So you've got the dragoons were out in the middle of the field, and they're like the vanguard. They're the advance guard for the rest of the congressional forces. And when they stopped there to rest, they put them out in the field so that anything that would happen, there would be somebody out there sort of on alert, ready to notice it. Oh. You'll notice now they're kind of rearranging themselves. Now what's happened, if you look and see what happened, the Crown forces or the British forces have got those dragoons like sort of now trapped in that corner. And somebody is going to have to go in and rescue them, or by King George to help increase his forces over here during the war.
On the fence! On the fence! On the fence!
Now this, you get around the back of the enemy, or, is it possible that half of one of the armies could get separated from the other half? So we'll need to keep an eye out and see what happens here. You can hear a drummer out there. He's giving commands, relaying commands to the troops. You'll notice also that most everybody is standing in a straight line out there. And that's because of the weapons they're using. They're using muskets, which is a smoothbore weapon, not as accurate as a rifle, but it's cheaper to manufacture. And you can fire it more frequently because everything out there that you see is a muzzle loader. So it takes a good 15 seconds. 10 to 15 seconds to reload. So you want to fire as frequently as you can. A rifle might take you a whole minute to load, whereas you can reload your musket in about 15 seconds. So that was actually the musket that could have a bayonet at the end, was your standard issue military weapon of the period. Most of the rifles were individually owned hunting weapons or issued to specialized troops. Now you'll notice there's some British light infantry, some redcoats there. They're pushing these dragoons kind of back towards the main force. You'll see now the commander on the congressional side is like kind of, except for these dragoons which are out here kind of separated, he's consolidating the rest of his force. You can see some of the British light infantry now sneaking along our fence line, trying to see if they can surround these dragoons. Didn't make it. Now we've got some of the loyalists coming in, taking advantage of that big gap that I mentioned down the center earlier. And now you can see the Crown forces have forced the congressional forces so that the congressional forces are actually, they're going to be fighting almost back to back with each other. So again, their commander has to be really careful not to make sure that they don't get cut off, or that these folks, these loyalists, do not get in behind, which it looked to me like what they're going for, trying to get in behind the main congressional forces line. You do see a few women out on the field. Actually, our research shows us that women would not have been hanging out on the battlefield in most cases behind the soldiers like they are today is just because in Chicago, where a lot of us are from, it was winter about a week ago. We just used our women as, frankly, 21st century first aiders to just check and make sure nobody's in any kind of trouble out there. You'll see a big volley from the Congressionals knocked out a bunch of the Loyalist troops on the British side. Now the Congressional force is pressing forward. Numbers look pretty even. You would expect, in many ways, you'd expect the British to win. They're much better supplied. All those redcoats are career soldiers, so they're much better trained and experienced in battle, whereas everybody on the other side is essentially a volunteer. Some of the enlistment periods were very short. So you could be facing somebody who had essentially almost no training. And so at the beginning of the revolution, everybody expected the Crown forces to win, especially because at most we think only about a third of the inhabitants of the North American colonies were ever in active rebellion against Great Britain at any given time. A third were loyal to Britain and the other third were neutral. Now, if you notice back in the far corner of the field, the Congressional forces have done exactly what the British were trying to do, and they've got looks like a local militia group or Minutemen group back there. It might be Culpeppers and some others from Culpeper County, Virginia, back there, and that the British are getting attacked from two different sides. I wondered what they were trying to do because they were kind of scrambling around on the field going here and there in what I thought was a disorganized fashion, but as it turns out, they had a plan that I didn't know about, which they were sending those troops that are now on the far side of the field back through the woods, and they were just waiting for them to come out, and now you can see them just advancing down the field to smash the British in between the two lines of Congressional forces. I see an officer out there. He's holding his sword up above his head. My guess is he's going to try and surrender and see if he can get some surrender terms for the Crown forces who have not managed to escape off the field. If so, there'll be a parley, and then it's up to him to accept or not whatever terms of surrender are offered to him. Regardless, the injured who we see out on the battlefield will be taken care of by the surgeons of the victorious side and then kept as prisoners of war. We also have a little closer to us some, I might call them battlefield entrepreneurs who are seeking to take advantage of some items that are evidently no longer needed by the persons who are wearing them at the moment. And we know this is actually pretty common. I mean, things like shoes being in short supply. We have people, soldiers stealing shoes from the dead, even of their own side during battle. So that's not all unusual. We also have got some firing going on back in the corner. So evidently those surrender talks did not turn out too well. It looks like there is a group of redcoats there, though, that did surrender themselves to the Congressional forces. And some of I think what happened back there was some Crown forces who chose not to surrender and leave the field there was some firing to stop them. In the period of the Revolution, which is 1775 to 1783, pretty generally the victor was considered to be whichever side held the field at the conclusion of the combat. Regardless of the number of casualties. And in fact, they even had arguments about, did the victorious army stay on the field long enough for it? Now we hear 3 cheers out there for the victory of the George Washington's Army, the congressional forces of the new United States of America have won our battle this afternoon. We will be back for a rematch at 8 o'clock tonight. We're trying an evening battle so you can see kind of a twilight battle. If you are able to stay for that, great. If not, please send your friends to come see us for our first evening battle at this 40th annual Spirit of Vincennes Rendezvous. And we thank you very much for coming out.